years exploring the meaning of life. And here's the truth. We don't really have the freedom to ignore this question. We can try. Many of us do. But we can only ignore it to our own detriment. Because sooner or later, something in your life will force this question to the surface. The meaning of your life, your project, your plans, your goals, your priorities. Something happens, a loss, a crisis, an achievement that feels strangely hollow, and suddenly you're asking, what's the point of all this? This matters more than we often realize, because to live with any real inner peace, to feel that sense of harmony with yourself, to be satisfied and experience life fully, you need a correct understanding of what life actually is. What meaning actually is. Most of us carry ideas about meaning that seem comforting but don't actually hold up. Everything happens for a reason. It's all karma. God has a plan. Even Buddhism's deepest teachings get twisted into something they were never meant to be. A cosmic insurance policy that everything will work out. Today, we're going to explore what Buddhism actually teaches about meaning. Not the spiritual cliches, but the real teachings. Why they matter, and what becomes possible when we see clearly. This is a journey we're taking together. If it feels right, share where you're listening from below. Get comfortable, take a breath, and let's begin. Someone loses their job. Not a job they loved, necessarily, but one that paid the bills. One that gave them structure, purpose, a place to be each morning. The termination comes suddenly. Budget cuts, restructuring, whatever language the company uses to make it sound inevitable. Within hours, the messages start arriving. Friends reaching out with comfort, with reassurance. Everything happens for a reason. The universe is making space for something better. When one door closes, another opens. This is actually a blessing in disguise. Or someone's relationship ends after years together. The same phrases appear. It wasn't meant to be. The universe has someone better planned for you. Everything happens for a reason. Or someone receives a difficult diagnosis. Health they took for granted suddenly uncertain. Again, well-meaning voices offer the same comfort. There's a reason for this. God doesn't give you more than you can handle. This is happening to teach you something. We've all heard these phrases. Many of us have said them. And here's what's worth noticing. There's something deeply seductive about them. Because what do they promise? They promise that chaos is actually order, that randomness is actually design, that loss is actually redirection. They take the unbearable uncertainty of existence and wrap it in cosmic purpose. We humans crave this. We want to believe there's an intelligence behind our suffering, that someone or something is watching, arranging, guiding, that the pain we're experiencing isn't meaningless, but meaningful, that it's leading somewhere good. The implicit message is always the same. If there's a reason, then you're going to benefit. Yes, this is painful right now. Yes, it feels unfair, surprising, devastating, but somehow, in ways you can't yet see, this is oriented toward your improvement, your growth, your eventual happiness. It's cosmic insurance, a guarantee that the universe is fundamentally on your side, that even when things fall apart, they're falling into a better arrangement. Some people frame this through God. Everything is designed by divine intelligence. We live receiving grace. Therefore, everything has a reason for being, even when we don't understand it. Even when we suffer, it's going to improve us. God has a plan, and that plan is good, even if we can't see the goodness yet. The suffering becomes holy in this view, redemptive, a refining fire that burns away impurities and leaves you stronger, purer, closer to the divine. Others frame it through karma. Everything is karma. There's coherence to reality. I've created this situation through my past actions, physical, verbal, and mental. Therefore, it must benefit me somehow. There must be a lesson in this moment I'm living. My karma brought me here, so this must be exactly what I need to grow spiritually. In this version, suffering becomes educational. The universe is a wise teacher, and pain is the curriculum designed specifically for your evolution. Still others use more modern spiritual language. Trust the universe. The universe has your back. What's meant for you won't miss you. You're being redirected to something better. Same promise, different vocabulary. The universe becomes a benevolent force arranging your life for optimal outcomes. And underneath all these versions lives the same comfortable idea: everything will work out well in the end. This is the lie we tell ourselves, not because people mean to deceive, but because the truth is harder to hold. But here's where we need to pause and look more carefully. Because there's false security in proclaiming that everything will work out well in the end. There's no guarantee, none whatsoever, that things are going to turn out well unless you make them turn out well. If you don't take responsibility for creating good outcomes for yourself and for the world around you, things don't magically arrange themselves in your favor. The universe isn't conspiring to help you. It's not conspiring against you either. It's simply unfolding according to causes and conditions. Let's look at karma first, since it's often the most misunderstood. In Buddhism, karma is natural law. It's the law of cause and effect. Everything we set in motion has consequences. Every action creates conditions. Those conditions create results. That's it. It's not a cosmic reward system. It's not divine judgment. It's not the universe keeping score and making sure you eventually get what you deserve, whether punishment or prize. There's no intelligence behind it, no purpose, no plan. Karma is simply this: Actions create conditions, and conditions create results. The results are coherent with the causes. It's a natural reflection of what we do, say, and think, like planting seeds and watching what grows. A farmer plants corn in the field. When the season comes, corn grows. The farmer plants thorns. Thorns grow. This isn't because the earth loves the farmer, or wants to teach the farmer lessons, or has a plan for the farmer's spiritual development. It's because seeds grow according to their nature when conditions are right. The earth is neutral. It doesn't care what you plant. It doesn't guide you toward planting good things. It simply responds to what you actually put in the ground. This is karma, neutral, natural, without preference or purpose. And here's what this means. The law of karma doesn't necessarily help us progress or evolve. If we act against reality, if we cause harm to others, if we move through the world with arrogance and closed-mindedness, if we refuse to see things as they actually are, our actions will have consequences. Those consequences may very well create suffering, pain, and damage. Not because we're being punished, not because the universe is trying to teach us something, not because we need this lesson for our growth, simply because that's what happens when you insist on going against reality. When you touch fire, you get burned. The fire isn't trying to teach you. It's just being fire. When you act harmfully, harm results. The harm isn't trying to enlighten you. It's just the natural consequence of harmful action. And here's the crucial point that changes everything. Suffering by itself doesn't make us better. This might be the most important thing to understand about the comfortable lie, because the lie suggests that pain has automatic benefits, that going through difficulty naturally makes you stronger, wiser, more compassionate, that suffering purifies like fire refining gold. But the fact of suffering doesn't illuminate us. It doesn't elevate us, or help us grow, mature, or evolve automatically. There's nothing magical about pain that transforms it into wisdom. It's not enough to suffer in order to become wise. Sometimes, often, actually, people suffer and respond badly to that suffering. The tragedy or pain creates more anger, more resentment, more bitterness, more fear, more sadness that hardens into depression, more clumsy, unskillful actions that create new cycles of suffering. You've seen this. Someone goes through something terrible and emerges more closed, more defensive, more convinced that people can't be trusted and life is fundamentally unfair. The suffering didn't enlighten them, it diminished them. Think about two people facing similar difficulties. Maybe both lose someone they love deeply. Maybe both face serious illness that changes everything. Maybe both experience profound betrayal or disappointment. One person meets that suffering and somehow, over time, becomes more compassionate, more patient with others' struggles, more aware of how much pain people carry silently, more humble about what they know and don't know, more grateful for whatever remains, more present with what is. The other person meets that same kind of suffering and becomes harder, more cynical about human nature, more closed off emotionally, more convinced the world is unfair and people can't be trusted, more bitter about what was lost and can never be recovered, more absent, unable to be present with what is. Same suffering, completely different outcomes. What made the difference? Not the suffering itself, not the intensity of the pain or the severity of the loss, the relationship to the suffering, how they met it, what they did with it, how they held it in their awareness. This is where the comfortable lie becomes dangerous, because if you believe everything happens for a reason, if you believe suffering automatically purifies or teaches, you become passive in the face of difficulty. You wait for the lesson to reveal itself. You wait for the growth to happen to you. You wait for time to do its healing work. But growth doesn't happen to you. Healing doesn't happen to you. Wisdom doesn't happen to you. You participate in all of these through how you respond to what happens. Consider someone enduring a difficult situation. Maybe it's a toxic work environment that erodes their confidence daily. Maybe it's a relationship that's causing real harm to their sense of self. Maybe it's family dynamics that are crushing their spirit and making them smaller. And someone tells them, "This is your karma. You're here to learn from this. There's a reason you're experiencing this. Don't leave until you've learned the lesson, or you'll just have to repeat it somewhere else." On the surface, this might sound like Buddhist wisdom. It uses Buddhist vocabulary. It sounds deep and spiritual. But it's actually a profound misunderstanding of what Buddhism teaches. Because it suggests three things, none of which are true. First, it suggests there's a cosmic curriculum designed specifically for you. That the universe, or God, or karma, or some intelligent force has placed you in this situation because you need this particular lesson. That your suffering is purposeful, educational, guided by wisdom higher than your own. This turns karma into intelligent design, which it isn't. Karma is cause and effect, not cosmic pedagogy. Second, it suggests that your suffering serves a higher purpose, so you should accept it, endure it, wait patiently for its benefits to appear. Don't leave the toxic job until you've learned what it's here to teach you. Don't end the harmful relationship until you've extracted the spiritual lesson. This turns karma into a justification for staying in harmful situations. It makes leaving look like spiritual failure. It traps people in suffering by framing escape as avoidance. Third, it suggests that if you're suffering, it's because you karmically deserve it or need it for your evolution. You created this through past actions, so you must endure it now. Your pain is your debt being paid, or your lesson being learned. This turns karma into a blame system where victims are somehow responsible for their victimization through mysterious past actions no one can verify. None of this is what Buddhism actually teaches. What Buddhism teaches is much simpler and more challenging. Actions have consequences. Plant corn, corn grows. Plant thorns, thorns grow. The earth doesn't care about your intentions, or your spiritual growth, or what lessons you need. It responds to what you actually plant. If you go through life creating harm, harming yourself, harming others, acting from ignorance and craving and aversion, those actions create conditions for suffering. Your suffering and others' suffering. Not because you're being taught a lesson, because that's what harmful actions do. They create harm. That's their nature. And if you keep insisting on this path, if you move through the world with a closed and stubborn mind, refusing to see reality as it actually is, refusing to learn from consequences, the suffering compounds, the harm accumulates. Again, not because the universe is punishing you, or trying to get your attention, or escalating the lessons because you're not learning fast enough, simply because that's how cause and effect works. Harmful causes create harmful effects, and if you keep creating the same causes, you keep getting the same effects. A person touches a hot stove, they get burned. The stove isn't trying to teach them anything. The burn is just what happens when tender skin meets intense heat. Natural law. Someone keeps touching the hot stove, insisting it should be different, refusing to accept what a hot stove does, waiting for the stove to change or for the burn to stop hurting, or for the universe to intervene. They keep getting burned. The suffering isn't deepening because they need to learn some profound spiritual lesson about hot stoves. They're suffering because they're repeatedly touching a hot stove. This might sound harsh. It might sound like it removes comfort, removes hope, removes the safety of believing someone or something is looking out for you. But actually, it's tremendously freeing. Because if suffering doesn't happen for a reason, if there's no cosmic plan guaranteeing everything works out, if karma is just natural cause and effect without intelligence or purpose behind it, then you're free. Free from what? Free from waiting for the universe to deliver meaning to you. Free from trying to decode what lesson you're supposed to learn from your pain. Free from the passivity of thinking everything is predetermined and you just need to trust the process. Free from the guilt of thinking your suffering means you did something wrong in this life or a past life. You're free to act, to respond, to take what's happening and work with it skillfully, to leave situations that are harmful, to change what can be changed, to accept what can't be changed and work with it anyway. Think about the person who lost their job. If they believe it happened for a reason, they might wait. Wait for the reason to become clear. Wait for the better opportunity to appear as promised. Wait for the universe to reveal its plan. Wait for the door that's supposed to open when this one closed. But if they understand that losing the job was just cause and effect, economic conditions, company decisions, perhaps some of their own actions or inactions, perhaps just the randomness of being in the wrong position when cuts came. Then they're free to respond actively, to grieve what was lost without needing it to mean something, to assess their situation clearly without spiritual bypass, to take concrete steps based on reality, to decide what they want to create from this moment. The ending of the relationship, same thing. If it happened because it was meant to be, or because the universe is clearing space for someone better, or because of karma from past lives that needed resolving, then the person is stuck in speculation about cosmic purposes, waiting for the universe to arrange the next chapter. But if they understand it as the natural result of two people who couldn't meet each other's needs, or who grew in different directions, or who handled conflict poorly, or any number of concrete, real factors, then they can learn actual things. They can see their patterns clearly. They can grow in specific ways. They can make different choices next time based on what they've learned. The difficult diagnosis, the health crisis, if it's part of some divine plan or karmic necessity or spiritual lesson, then the person's main task is acceptance and trust, waiting for the hidden purpose to reveal itself. But if it's the body responding to conditions, genetics, environment, choices, time, chance, causes too complex to fully understand, then the person can engage actively with treatment, with lifestyle changes, with quality of life decisions, with the real situation in front of them, without needing it to mean something beyond what it is. Do you see the difference? One approach, everything happens for a reason, creates passive waiting. You're waiting for meaning to be delivered, for purposes to be revealed, for cosmic forces to finish arranging things. The other approach, things happen because of causes and conditions, creates active engagement. You're working with reality as it actually is, responding to what's actually here, creating what you can create from the clay you've been given. One removes your agency and places it in invisible hands. The other demands your agency and places it back in your own hands. And this brings us back to the uncomfortable truth we started with. There's no guarantee things will work out well unless you make them work out well. Not through magical thinking, or positive affirmations, or trusting the universe, or believing everything happens for a reason. Through clear seeing, skillful action, and taking responsibility for creating good, good for yourself, and good for the world you're part of. The person who understands this doesn't need cosmic insurance. They don't need to believe they're protected or guided, or tested, or taught by invisible forces arranging their life for optimal growth. They understand something simpler and more powerful. I have agency here, not total control. Causes and conditions are vast and complex, and much is outside anyone's control. But I have responsibility, the ability to respond, the capacity to choose how I meet what's here. Whatever is happening, I can meet it skillfully or unskillfully. I can act from wisdom or from ignorance. I can create conditions for more suffering or for more freedom. not because I have total power over outcomes, but because my response matters. It creates conditions. Those conditions create results. The clay is in my hands. What I make from it depends on how I work with it. This doesn't mean we judge ourselves harshly when we struggle. It doesn't mean we're to blame for every difficulty we face. Many causes and conditions create each moment, and most of them have nothing to do with us personally. Sometimes terrible things happen to people who didn't create the conditions for those things. That's the randomness built into a universe of countless causes and conditions. But it does mean we stop waiting for meaning to be delivered to us. We stop looking for the hidden purpose in our pain. We stop expecting the universe to arrange things in our favor. If we just trust enough, or have the right attitude, or learn the right lessons, we see clearly, this is what's happening. These are the conditions I'm working with. These are the choices available to me. This is what I can create from here, from now, from this moment. Not everything happens for a reason. Most things just happen because causes and conditions came together in a particular way at a particular time. But you can respond with wisdom. You can learn and grow and extract something valuable from even difficult circumstances. You can become more compassionate, more patient, more clear-seeing because of what you've been through. Not because the difficulty was designed to teach you these things, but because you chose to meet the difficulty that way, because you took the raw material of your experience and shaped it into wisdom. That's the real teaching. Not cosmic comfort, but human capability. Not predetermined meaning, but meaning you create through how you live, how you respond, how you work with the clay you've been given. And that's actually much more empowering than any comfortable lie could ever be. So, if everything doesn't happen for a reason, if there's no cosmic plan guiding us toward growth, what does Buddhism actually teach about how life works? Let's start with something simple, something you can see with your own eyes. Imagine a farmer standing at the edge of their field in early spring. The soil is ready. The season is right. They have seeds in their hand. If the farmer plants corn, what grows? Corn grows. When the season turns, when rain comes and sun warms the earth, corn pushes up through the soil. The farmer harvests corn. If the farmer plants thorns, what grows? Thorns grow, sharp, tangled, difficult to remove. The field becomes unusable, painful to walk through. The farmer harvests thorns. Now here's the question. Is the earth trying to teach the farmer something? Is the soil judging which seeds deserve to grow? Is there some intelligence in the ground, deciding that this farmer needs the lesson of thorns this season, or that farmer has earned the reward of corn? Of course not. The earth is completely neutral. It responds to what's actually planted. Corn seeds get the conditions for corn. They grow into corn. Thorn seeds get the conditions for thorns. they grow into thorns. There's no preference, no purpose, no plan, no invisible hand arranging the harvest for the farmer's benefit or punishment. Just cause and effect, natural law. Seeds grow according to their nature when conditions are right. This is karma, not cosmic justice, not divine orchestration, not a reward and punishment system operated by the universe. Just this: actions create conditions, and conditions create results. The Buddha taught this clearly. He said that our actions, physical, verbal, and mental, plant seeds. These seeds grow when they meet the right conditions. What grows is coherent with what was planted. Act with kindness, and you create conditions for connection, trust, and support. Not because the universe rewards kindness, but because kind actions naturally create these conditions. People respond to kindness with openness. That's just how it works. Act with cruelty, and you create conditions for isolation, defensiveness, and conflict. Not because the universe punishes cruelty, but because cruel actions naturally create these conditions. People respond to cruelty with protection and distance. That's just how it works. Speak truthfully, and you create conditions where people trust your word. Speak deceptively, and you create conditions where people doubt what you say. The difference isn't cosmic, it's natural. Think with clarity, and you create conditions for wise choices. Think with confusion and delusion, and you create conditions for unwise choices. Again, natural consequences, not cosmic judgment. This might seem obvious when we state it so plainly, but notice what's missing from this teaching. There's no guarantee that your good actions will be rewarded. There's no promise that if you're kind and truthful and clear-minded, everything will work out well for you. You might act with tremendous kindness and still face loss. You might speak truth and still be rejected. You might think clearly and still encounter circumstances beyond your control. Because karma is just one set of causes and conditions among countless others. Your actions create some conditions, but not all conditions. The results you experience come from causes you created and causes you didn't create, all mixing together. The farmer plants corn, but whether corn grows depends on more than what was planted. Rain needs to come, the sun needs to shine, pests might arrive, blight might spread, a storm might flood the field. The farmer did their part by planting good seeds, but the harvest depends on countless factors, most of them outside the farmer's control. This is crucial to understand. Karma doesn't mean you get what you deserve. It means actions have natural consequences, but those consequences interact with everything else that's happening. So no, there's no invisible hand arranging things for your benefit. But there's also no invisible hand arranging things against you. The universe isn't for you or against you. It's simply unfolding according to causes and conditions, most of which have nothing to do with you personally. And here's where Buddhism's teaching becomes truly interesting. Because if nothing is arranged for your benefit, if there's no predetermined meaning waiting to be discovered, if karma is just neutral cause and effect, then what is the meaning of life? The answer is both simple and radical. Meaning is something you create. Not something you find. Not something you're given. Not something that exists independently, waiting for you to stumble upon it. You create it from raw material. The original Dharma talk we're drawing from uses a beautiful image for this. Everything is clay. Think about that for a moment. When a sculptor looks at a lump of clay, what do they see? Not a finished piece. Not a predetermined form trapped inside, waiting to be discovered. They see potential, raw material, something that can become many different things depending on how they work with it. One sculptor takes the clay and creates something beautiful, meaningful, useful. Another sculptor takes the same clay and creates something chaotic, or ugly, or broken. The clay didn't determine the outcome. The sculptor's skill, vision, and choices determined the outcome. This is what the teaching means when it says everything is clay. Your circumstances don't come prefabricated with meaning. Your experiences don't arrive with purpose already built in. Your life isn't a puzzle where you're trying to find the right pieces to reveal a picture someone else designed. Everything that happens to you is raw material, clay in your hands. You decide what to make from it. This is the paradigm shift Buddhism offers. Most of us spend our lives trying to discover our purpose, as if purpose is something external to us, something we need to find, or earn, or deserve. We ask, what am I meant to do? What's my calling? What path was I put here to follow? These questions assume meaning exists somewhere out there, and we just need to locate it. But Buddhism teaches something different. Meaning doesn't exist out there waiting for you. You create meaning through how you engage with what's actually here. You're not discovering your purpose. You're sculpting it from the clay of your actual life, your actual circumstances, your actual capacities, your actual opportunities and limitations. Let's make this concrete. Two people face the same crisis. Let's say both lose their health suddenly. The same illness, the same diagnosis, the same treatment options, the same prognosis, same clay. One person takes this clay and shapes it into bitterness. They focus on what's been stolen from them. They compare their life now to their life before and feel only loss. They withdraw from people who still have their health because it's too painful to witness. They become angry at their body for betraying them, at doctors for not fixing them, at the universe for allowing this. Over time, this person becomes smaller, more isolated, more rigid in their suffering. The illness is terrible, yes, but their relationship to the illness creates additional suffering on top of the physical suffering. The other person receives the same clay, the same diagnosis, the same limitations, the same losses, but they shape it differently. They grieve what's been lost, fully and honestly, but they also start noticing what remains. They discover they can still connect with people, still offer kindness, still find moments of beauty, even in very limited circumstances. They start relating to their body with compassion instead of anger. This body that's struggling, that's trying its best, even while failing in certain ways. They notice their mind's tendency toward despair and learn to work with it gently. Over time, this person becomes different, not better in some simple sense, but more spacious, more able to be with difficulty without being destroyed by it, more compassionate toward others who suffer, more appreciative of small things, more present with what actually is. Same circumstances, same clay, completely different creations. Now, did the illness happen to teach them something? No. The illness happened because causes and conditions came together. Biology, environment, genetics, chance, countless factors. Did one person respond correctly and the other incorrectly? It's not that simple. Both responses are understandable. Both are human. Bitterness in the face of devastating loss makes sense. Rage at unfairness is natural. But the question isn't whether the response is justified. The question is, what did each person create from the clay they were given? One created more suffering on top of unavoidable suffering. The other created some degree of peace, some wisdom, some capacity to be with difficulty. The difference wasn't in the circumstances. The difference was in the relationship to the circumstances. This is what Buddhism means when it teaches that perception transforms reality. There's a teaching that comes from Tibetan Buddhist masters. They say, if you have the audacity to see other people as Buddhas, you'll receive the blessings of Buddhas from them. But if you see them as enemies, you'll receive harm from them, even when they're trying to help you. At first, this might sound mystical or metaphorical, but it's actually describing something very practical about how perception works. Imagine someone offers you feedback about your work, the exact same words, spoken the exact same way. If you perceive this person as someone who wants you to succeed, who cares about your growth, who sees potential in you, you receive their feedback as valuable information. You consider what they're saying. You thank them. You use it to improve. If you perceive this person as someone who wants to criticize you, who's looking for your flaws, who's threatened by your success, you receive their feedback as an attack. You become defensive. You dismiss what they're saying. You create distance. Same words, same situation. Your perception determined what you actually received from the interaction. The Tibetan teachers are saying something even more radical than this. They're saying that if you relate to people as if they have Buddha nature, as if they're fundamentally good, fundamentally capable of wisdom and compassion, even when they're currently confused or unskillful, something shifts. You create conditions for them to show you their Buddha nature, not because you're magically transforming them, but because you're relating to them in a way that invites their best qualities forward. But if you relate to people as enemies, as threats, as fundamentally untrustworthy, you create conditions for them to show you exactly that. They become defensive around your defensiveness. They become closed around your closure. They withhold around your withholding. And here's the really interesting part. Even when they're genuinely trying to help you, you can't receive it. Your perception filters it out or reinterprets it as something harmful. So you end up suffering even when help is being offered, because your perception of the situation determines what you're actually able to receive. This isn't just about other people. It's about everything. How you perceive your circumstances determines what you can extract from them. Someone loses their job and perceives it as catastrophe, as proof that they're not good enough, as the beginning of a downward spiral. They create those conditions through their perception. They become paralyzed by fear. They approach new opportunities with desperation. They confirm their belief that they're not good enough. Someone loses their job and perceives it as difficult but workable, as an ending that makes space for something else, as uncomfortable but not catastrophic. They create different conditions. They grieve the loss, but also start taking practical steps. They approach new opportunities with realistic assessment rather than desperation. They stay open to learning what this transition might teach them. Same event, different perceptions, different experiences of reality. Now, Buddhism isn't teaching that you can simply think positive thoughts and make everything perfect. That's not what this means. Losing your job is difficult, regardless of how you perceive it. Illness is painful regardless of your attitude. Loss hurts, regardless of your philosophy. The teaching isn't that perception changes the facts. It's that perception changes your relationship to the facts, and your relationship to the facts determines what you can do with them. The clay is still clay, but what you can create from the clay depends enormously on how you see it and how you work with it. And this is why the teaching is liberating rather than nihilistic. When people first hear that life has no inherent meaning, that nothing happens for a reason, that the universe isn't arranged for their benefit, it can sound depressing. It can sound like nothing matters. But actually, it's the opposite. If meaning were predetermined, you'd be stuck with whatever meaning was assigned to you. If your purpose were fixed, you'd just be following a script someone else wrote. If everything happened for a reason, you'd be passive in your own life, waiting to understand the reasons. But if meaning is something you create, if purpose is something you sculpt from the raw material of your actual life, then you have agency, real agency. You're not waiting for meaning to arrive. You're not hoping to discover your purpose. You're not trying to figure out what you're meant to do. You're actively creating meaning through how you meet each moment, through what you choose to value, through what you choose to cultivate, through what you make from the clay you've been given. This is the paradigm shift. From "What is life asking of me?" to "What will I create from this life?" From "What does this suffering mean?" to "What will I make from this suffering?" From "Why is this happening to me?" to "How will I work with what's happening?" The original teaching puts it beautifully. Everything is an invitation for you to use it in the best way possible, to take advantage of it in the best way possible. Not because it was designed as an invitation, not because someone planned it as an opportunity for you, but because you have the capacity to treat it that way. You can take any situation and ask, "What can I extract from this?" Not what lesson is it supposed to teach me, but what can I actually learn here if I pay attention? What strength can I develop? What wisdom can I discover? What virtue can I practice? The person who has this audacity progresses. The person who can look at any situation, even terrible situations, even unfair situations, even situations they didn't choose and don't want, and say, "I will relate to this as if it were valuable clay," that person creates value from it. Not because the situation was inherently valuable, but because they treated it as valuable raw material and worked with it skillfully. Think about someone facing a difficult relationship. Maybe it's a family member who's critical and demanding. Maybe it's a colleague who's competitive and undermining. Maybe it's a friend who's going through something difficult and becoming draining to be around. One response: "This person is toxic. They're damaging me. I need to protect myself by cutting them off or minimizing contact." Sometimes that's exactly right. Sometimes people are causing real harm, and the wise thing is to create distance. But sometimes there's another possibility, not instead of boundaries, but alongside appropriate boundaries. What if you perceived this difficult person as an opportunity to practice patience? Not because they're supposed to teach you patience, but because that's what you choose to practice here. What if you perceived their criticism as information about their own pain rather than truth about your inadequacy? Not because you're making excuses for them, but because that's a more accurate perception. What if you perceived their difficult behavior as clay, raw material you can work with to develop compassion or clarity or the ability to stay centered when things are uncomfortable? Your perception changes what you extract from the situation. The situation itself might not change at all. The person might still be difficult, but your experience of the situation changes completely based on how you're working with it. The Tibetan teaching says, see them as Buddhas, receive Buddha's blessings. See them as enemies, receive harm even from their help. What this means practically, your perception determines what you're able to receive and what you're able to create from any situation. And this brings us to the heart of what Buddhism actually teaches about the meaning of life. Life doesn't have meaning that you discover. Life has meaning that you create through how you engage with what's actually here. You're not finding your purpose. You're sculpting your purpose from the clay of your actual circumstances, your actual capacities, your actual moment-to-moment choices. This is both more demanding and more empowering than believing in predetermined meaning. More demanding because you can't wait for someone else, God, the universe, karma, fate, to hand you meaning. You have to create it through your engagement with reality. More empowering because you're not stuck with whatever meaning might have been assigned to you. You're the artist. You have clay. What you make is up to you. Not completely up to you, because you don't control all the conditions. You can't choose what clay you're given. You can't control how much clay you get, or when you get it, or what other forces are shaping it besides you. But within all those constraints, you have genuine freedom. The freedom to choose your relationship to what's here. The freedom to work with reality skillfully or unskillfully. The freedom to create meaning from raw material. The farmer plants seeds. The farmer can't control the weather, or the pests, or the market price at harvest. But the farmer can choose what seeds to plant. The farmer can prepare the soil. The farmer can tend the crops as they grow. The farmer can work skillfully with whatever conditions actually appear. That's your freedom. That's your agency. Not control over outcomes, but genuine choice about how you engage with what's actually here. So when Buddhism teaches that everything is clay, it's teaching something profound about human freedom. You're not trapped in a predetermined story. You're not following a script written by cosmic forces. You're not waiting to discover the one true meaning of your life that exists somewhere out there. You're working with reality as it actually presents itself, messy, unpredictable, often difficult, sometimes beautiful, always changing. And from this raw material, from this clay, you're creating a life. Not the life you might have preferred to live. Not the life you thought you were supposed to live. The life you're actually living, shaped by your choices, your perceptions, your responses to what appears. This is what it means when the teaching says, you're not stuck waiting for meaning to arrive. You're the artist. You have clay. You have hands. You have this moment. What will you create? Not in some grand final sense. Not the ultimate meaning of your entire existence figured out once and for all. Just, what will you create from this moment? From this interaction? From this difficulty? From this joy? from this ordinariness? The person who understands this stops waiting, stops searching for the hidden purpose, stops trying to decode what the universe is trying to teach them. They pick up the clay. They start working. Not frantically, not desperately, not with the pressure of getting it perfect, but with the quiet confidence of knowing they have agency here. They have responsibility. They have the capacity to create something meaningful from whatever raw material they've been given. And that changes everything. Because when you're not waiting for meaning to be delivered, you're free to create it right now. In this conversation, in this choice, in how you meet this moment, the clay is in your hands. It always has been. Buddhism is simply pointing this out, helping you see what was always true, but easy to miss when you're busy looking for predetermined purposes and cosmic plans. You're the sculptor. Reality is the clay, and every moment is an opportunity to work with it skillfully, to create something valuable, to shape meaning from raw material. Not because that's what you're supposed to do, not because that's your destiny or your calling or your predetermined purpose, but because you can, because you have hands and clay, and this moment, because that's what it means to be human, to have the capacity to create meaning from experience, to shape reality through how we engage with it, to be artists of our own lives, even within all the constraints we didn't choose. This is the teaching, simple and radical. Everything is clay. What you make from it is up to you. Now we need to talk about something practical, because understanding that everything is clay is one thing. Actually working with the clay is another. And here's what becomes visible when you pay attention. Some people progress steadily through life, while others stay stuck, waiting for the right conditions. Let's look at the person who waits. There's a particular kind of person who only seizes opportunities one day a year. Maybe not literally one day, but the principle is the same. This person is waiting for everything to align perfectly. They're waiting for the astrology to be right. Mercury can't be in retrograde. The moon needs to be in the correct phase. New moon for beginnings. Full moon for culmination. Whatever their system tells them. They're waiting for the tides to align. The numerology to add up correctly. The cards to give them a green light. They're waiting for their friends to be available and supportive, for their partner to be in a good mood and encouraging, for their family to approve. They're waiting for their health to be perfect. No fatigue, no minor aches, no slight cold coming on. They need to feel completely well before they can begin. They're waiting for inspiration to strike, for motivation to arrive naturally, for the creative muse to visit, for everything to feel aligned internally and externally. They're waiting for their mood to be just right, not too anxious, not too sad, not too restless. They need to feel calm and centered before they can take meaningful action. They're waiting for financial conditions to improve, for more time to open up in their schedule, for the right opportunity to present itself clearly, for a sign from the universe that now is the moment. And here's what's interesting. Sometimes all these things do align. Once in a while, maybe once a year, maybe even less often, everything coincides perfectly. The moon is right. The astrology is favorable. The tides coincide. Their friends are supportive. Their partner is encouraging. Their health is good. Their inspiration is flowing. Their mood is perfect. The timing feels right. And on that day, that magical day, when everything aligns, they act. They discover something. They make progress. They feel alive and purposeful. And they say, "See, this is when I'm meant to work, when the universe supports me, when conditions are right. This is confirmation that I should wait for the right timing." But here's the problem with this approach. There are 364 other days. 364 days when the moon isn't quite right, when Mercury is doing something inconvenient, when friends are busy, when inspiration hasn't arrived yet, when health is just slightly off, when the tides aren't perfectly aligned. 364 days of waiting, of preparing to prepare, of getting ready to get ready, of checking the conditions and finding them not quite perfect yet. This is painfully slow progress. Actually, it's barely progress at all. Because growth doesn't happen in those single perfect days. Growth happens in the steady accumulation of ordinary days, where you work with whatever conditions actually exist. Now contrast this with the person who actually progresses. This person doesn't depend on astrology. They're not checking whether Mars is in their favor before they take action. They don't depend on numerology. They're not calculating whether this is an auspicious date according to some system before they begin. They don't depend on solar eclipses, or the galactic center, or the position of planets, or the messages in tarot cards, or the tides, or the phases of the moon. They don't depend on their friends all being available and supportive. They don't depend on their family approving. They don't depend on their partner being in a good mood. They don't depend on perfect health or ideal energy or complete inspiration. They don't wait for all conditions to be perfect because they understand something fundamental. Conditions are never perfect. There's always something that isn't quite right. Always some reason to wait, if you're looking for reasons to wait. So instead of waiting, this person declares something radical. In the original teaching, it's stated powerfully, "My life, I command. My state, I command." Not in an arrogant way, not with the delusion that they control everything, but with the clear understanding that they have agency over their response to what appears. I will decide what I think. I will decide what I feel. I will decide what I attend to. This is the declaration of someone who understands where their actual power lies. Not in controlling the moon or the astrology or other people or external circumstances, but in choosing their relationship to whatever circumstances actually exist. The teaching continues. I'm going to face this situation. I'm going to relate to this situation as if it were the best opportunity that could exist in the universe, in all lifetimes. Now, this might sound absurd at first. You lose your job, and you're supposed to relate to it as if it's the best opportunity in the universe. Your relationship ends painfully, and you're supposed to see it as the ultimate gift. You face illness or loss or disappointment, and you're supposed to pretend it's actually wonderful. That would be delusion. That would be toxic positivity. That would be denial of reality. But that's not what the teaching means. The teaching isn't about pretending something painful isn't painful. It's not about denying difficulty or forcing yourself to feel grateful for things that hurt. It's about something more subtle and more powerful. It's about choosing to extract maximum benefit from whatever actually appears. Here's the key insight. Whether a situation benefits you or harms you depends largely on how you meet it. The clay is neutral. What you create from it depends on your skill, your attention, your willingness to work with what's actually here, rather than what you wish were here. So when someone faces a difficult situation and decides to relate to it as if it were the best opportunity in the universe, they're not lying to themselves about the difficulty. They're choosing to engage with it in the most skillful way possible. They're asking, what can I extract from this? What can I learn here? What strength can I develop? What wisdom can I discover? How can I use this clay to create something valuable? Not because the situation was designed to teach them these things, but because they're choosing to work with it that way. And here's what the original teaching emphasizes. The person who has this audacity progresses. The person who can look at any situation, favorable or unfavorable, easy or difficult, chosen or unchosen, and say, I will work with this as skillfully as I can. I will extract what value exists here. That person keeps growing. They don't progress because they're lucky, or blessed, or cosmically favored. They progress because they're not waiting for perfect conditions before they engage with reality. Meanwhile, the person without this stability, without this internal resourcefulness, only progresses on that one perfect day per year, when everything aligns just right, when the stars and the mood and the circumstances all coincide perfectly. And even then, their progress is tentative, because they're so dependent on external conditions remaining perfect that any small disruption can derail them completely. The friend becomes unavailable. Progress stops. The astrology shifts. Progress stops. The inspiration fades. Progress stops. A minor health issue appears. Progress stops. This is the difference between external dependence and internal resourcefulness. External dependence means I can only move forward when conditions outside me are arranged in a particular way. When people support me, when circumstances favor me, when everything feels right. Internal resourcefulness means I can work with whatever conditions actually exist. I can find ways to move forward even when circumstances aren't ideal. I don't need everything to be perfect before I engage. Let's make this more concrete with real-world examples. Someone wants to develop a meditation practice. The externally dependent person waits for the right conditions. They need a perfectly quiet space. They need enough time to meditate for 30 minutes or 45 minutes, because anything less doesn't count. They need to feel calm already, because they can't possibly meditate when they're stressed. They need the right cushion, the right app, the right guided meditation. These conditions rarely align, so they meditate occasionally when everything is perfect, and spend the rest of the time planning to meditate once conditions improve. The internally resourceful person sits down wherever they are. 5 minutes in a noisy room counts. 3 breaths while waiting for the coffee to brew counts. Meditating precisely when they're stressed is when it matters most. A chair works fine if there's no cushion. They're not waiting for conditions to be perfect. They're working with the conditions that actually exist. And over time, their practice becomes steady because it doesn't depend on everything being just right. Someone wants to improve their health. The externally dependent person waits for motivation to strike. They need to feel inspired to eat well. They need their partner to be on board with healthy eating so it's easier. They need the perfect workout program, the perfect time of day, the perfect energy level. They need to start on Monday or the first of the month, or after this stressful period ends. These conditions rarely align all at once, so they have brief periods of perfect adherence to their health goals, followed by long periods of waiting for the right time to start again. The internally resourceful person takes the next better action available right now. They don't wait for motivation, they act, and sometimes motivation follows. They make what improvements they can regardless of what their partner is doing. They walk for 15 minutes because that's what's actually possible today, even if it's not the perfect workout they'd prefer. They start now, on a random Wednesday afternoon, because now is when they're thinking about it. They're working with reality as it is, not as they wish it were. And over time, their health improves because they're taking consistent action with imperfect conditions rather than waiting for perfect conditions that never come. Someone wants to learn a new skill. The externally dependent person waits until they have large blocks of uninterrupted time. They need to feel mentally fresh and creative. They need the right course, or the right teacher, or the right learning environment. They need to be in the right headspace, not too stressed or too tired or too busy. These conditions are rare, so they learn in occasional bursts when everything aligns, and spend most of their time waiting for the right time to really commit to learning. The internally resourceful person learns in whatever cracks exist in their day. 10 minutes while commuting, 20 minutes before bed, even though they're tired. They start with whatever resources are actually available, not the perfect course they'll take someday. They learn precisely when they're busy because that's their reality. They understand that imperfect practice sustained over time creates more learning than perfect conditions that never actually arrive. Do you see the pattern? The person who progresses doesn't have better conditions than the person who stays stuck. Often they have worse conditions, more constraints, less support, more obstacles. But they have something more valuable than perfect conditions. They have the audacity to work with imperfect conditions. They have the understanding that waiting for everything to align is just another form of avoiding engagement with reality. And they have the declaration, "My life, I command. My state, I command. I will decide how I meet this moment." This isn't about willpower or discipline or being tougher than everyone else. It's about something more fundamental. It's about understanding that your experience of life is largely determined by your relationship to what appears, not by what appears. Two people have busy, stressful lives. One waits until life calms down before they can practice meditation, or exercise, or learn something new. The other practices meditation or exercises, or learns precisely because life is busy and stressful. That's when these things matter most. Two people face financial constraints. One waits until they have more money before they can pursue their interests. The other pursues their interests within the constraints that actually exist, finding free resources, borrowing equipment, creating with what's available. Two people lack perfect support from family or friends. One waits until everyone is on board and encouraging before they make changes. The other makes changes anyway, understanding that they can't outsource responsibility for their life to other people's approval. The difference isn't in their circumstances. The difference is in their relationship to their circumstances. The person who thrives has learned not to wait. They've learned that inspiration doesn't precede action. It usually follows it. You don't wait to feel like meditating before you meditate. You meditate, and sometimes the feeling of wanting to meditate appears afterward. They've learned that perfect timing doesn't exist. There will always be reasons why now isn't ideal. The person who waits for ideal timing waits forever. The person who starts with non-ideal timing starts now. They've learned that external conditions are largely outside their control, but their engagement with those conditions is entirely within their control. This is what the teaching means about audacity. It takes audacity to look at a difficult situation and say, I will treat this as if it were the best opportunity available to me, because in a real sense it's the only opportunity actually available to me right now. It takes audacity to stop waiting for the universe or astrology or other people, or your mood, to give you permission to engage with your life. It takes audacity to declare, my life, I command, not in the sense that you control everything, but in the sense that you take responsibility for your response to everything. And the teaching is clear. This audacity is what allows people to progress. Not special talents or lucky breaks or perfect conditions. Audacity, the courage to work with what's actually here, rather than waiting for what might appear later. Now, how does this work in daily life? Because it's one thing to understand the principle, and another thing to actually live it. Here's what it looks like practically. You wake up feeling tired and unmotivated. The old pattern would be to wait until you feel more energized before you do anything meaningful. The new pattern is asking, what's the smallest version of progress I can make right now with this actual energy level? Maybe that's 3 minutes of stretching instead of a full workout. Maybe that's washing one dish instead of cleaning the whole kitchen. Maybe that's writing one sentence instead of a full page. You're not waiting for ideal energy. You're working with actual energy. Someone criticizes you or treats you unfairly. The old pattern would be to wait until you feel less upset, less reactive, before you decide how to respond. The new pattern is noticing this feeling of upset is part of the clay right now. How do I work with it skillfully? Maybe that means taking 3 breaths before responding. Maybe that means noticing your defensiveness without acting from it. Maybe that means choosing to learn something about your own reactivity, even while being treated unfairly. You're not waiting for perfect equanimity before you engage. You're engaging with the reality of your actual state and working skillfully within it. Your day doesn't go according to plan. Interruptions appear. Things take longer than expected. The schedule falls apart. The old pattern would be to write off the day and wait for a better day tomorrow. The new pattern is asking, what's actually possible in the time and energy I actually have now? Not what should be possible if things had gone according to plan. What is possible with things as they actually are? You're not waiting for the perfect day. You're working with the actual day. This is what it means to have internal resourcefulness, rather than external dependence. You stop asking, are conditions good enough for me to act? You start asking, how can I act skillfully within the conditions that actually exist? You stop asking, is this the right time? You start asking, how can I make good use of this time? You stop asking, do I feel like it? You start asking, what's needed here, and can I offer it? The shift is subtle but profound. You're no longer waiting for reality to meet your preferences before you engage with it. You're engaging with reality as it actually presents itself and working skillfully within that. And here's what happens over time with this approach. You progress. Not because you're more talented or more disciplined or luckier than other people, but because you're actually working with the clay you've been given, rather than waiting for different clay to appear. You meditate inconsistently at first, in imperfect conditions, but over months and years, it becomes steady. You learn slowly, in small increments with interruptions and setbacks. But over time, you actually gain new skills. You make small choices toward health day after day without perfect conditions. And over time, your health improves. Meanwhile, the person waiting for perfect conditions is still waiting, still planning to start when Mercury leaves retrograde, still preparing to prepare, still getting ready to get ready. 364 days of waiting for that one perfect day that might never come. The teaching is compassionate but clear. This doesn't work. This is not how progress happens. This is not how people thrive. People thrive by working with reality as it actually is, not as they wish it were. They thrive by taking the clay in their hands, whatever clay they've been given, in whatever condition it arrives, and working with it. They thrive by having the audacity to say, "This situation, right here, right now, imperfect as it is, I will work with this as if it were valuable, because my engagement with it can create value, regardless of whether value was inherent in it." This is the secret, if it can be called a secret. Not perfect conditions, not ideal circumstances, not cosmic alignment, not everyone's approval and support, not perfect health and unlimited energy and constant inspiration. Just this, the willingness to work with what's actually here. The understanding that 364 days of imperfect engagement creates more progress than waiting for one perfect day. The audacity to declare, "My life, I command. My state, I command. I will decide how I meet this moment, this clay, this opportunity that exists right now." And when you see people who are actually thriving, actually growing, actually creating meaningful lives despite difficulties and constraints and imperfect conditions, this is usually what you find. Not that they have it easier, not that conditions favor them, not that the universe is arranging things for their benefit, but that they've stopped waiting for ideal conditions and started working with actual conditions. They've stopped depending on external alignment and started developing internal resourcefulness. They've stopped treating life as something that happens to them when circumstances are right and started treating life as something they create through their engagement with whatever circumstances actually exist. That's the difference. That's what separates the person who progresses from the person who waits. And the beautiful thing is, this capacity is available to anyone. It's not a special talent you're born with or without. It's a choice you can make right now with whatever is actually in front of you. The clay is in your hands. Not perfect clay, not ideal clay, not the clay you would have chosen if you were designing your life from scratch. Just this clay, right here, right now. Will you wait for different clay, or will you work with what's actually here? The person who thrives has answered that question. They've picked up the clay. They've started working. Not someday, when conditions are better. Now, with conditions as they are. And that makes all the difference. Because at the end of your life, what matters won't be that one perfect day when everything aligned. What matters will be what you created from all the imperfect days, from all the ordinary moments when conditions weren't ideal, but you engaged anyway. That's where the real life was lived. That's where the real meaning was created, in the 364 other days. So the question isn't whether today is perfect. The question is, will you work with today as it actually is? The clay is waiting. We need to address something that often gets glossed over in spiritual teachings. Something uncomfortable but essential to understand. Suffering by itself is not a vehicle of consciousness. Let that land for a moment. The fact of suffering doesn't illuminate you. It doesn't elevate you or help you grow, mature, or evolve. Pain doesn't automatically make you wiser, or more compassionate, or more spiritually developed. It's not enough to suffer in order to grow. This contradicts a deeply held belief in many spiritual traditions and self-help philosophies. The idea that pain purifies, that difficulty strengthens, that what doesn't kill you makes you stronger. But if you look honestly at how suffering actually works in people's lives, you'll see something more complex and often more troubling. Someone experiences tragedy, a devastating loss, a profound betrayal, a sudden collapse of everything they'd built. And instead of emerging wiser or more compassionate, they become harder, more bitter, more closed off. The tragedy creates more anger in them. They rage at the unfairness of what happened. They fixate on who's to blame. They replay the events obsessively, each replay deepening their resentment. The tragedy creates more sadness, not the clean grief that moves through you and eventually releases, but a heavy, stuck sadness that settles into their bones. A grey filter over everything, a conviction that nothing good can happen now. And from this place of anger and resentment and stuck sadness, they act. But their actions are clumsier now, more reactive, more likely to create new problems. They push people away in their bitterness. They make decisions from fear rather than clarity. They close themselves off from opportunities because they can't imagine anything working out well. And these actions create more suffering, more isolation, more missed opportunities, more confirmation that life is unfair and people can't be trusted. This is the cycle. Bad response to pain creates conditions for more pain. The original suffering, the tragedy that happened, wasn't good for them, and their response to it made things worse, not better. You've seen this. Maybe you've lived it. Someone goes through a painful divorce and emerges convinced that all relationships are doomed, that trust is impossible, that love always ends in betrayal. The divorce didn't make them wiser about relationships. It made them more rigid, more defended, less capable of intimacy. Someone faces a serious illness and becomes consumed by anger at their body, at doctors, at the universe for allowing this. The illness didn't teach them compassion or presence. It taught them to be constantly vigilant for the next disaster, always waiting for the other shoe to drop. Someone loses their job and spirals into shame and self-doubt, becoming paralyzed by the fear of trying again and failing again. The job loss didn't reveal their resilience. It revealed their fragility, and they've organized their whole life around protecting that fragility ever since. This is what actually happens when suffering meets unskillful response. The suffering doesn't purify, it compounds. So, why do we want to believe otherwise? Why is the myth of redemptive suffering so compelling? Because it makes enduring difficulty feel meaningful. If pain automatically purifies, then your suffering has purpose, even when you can't see it. You're being refined like gold in fire. You're being strengthened like metal under stress. The worse it is, the more profound the transformation must be. This belief allows you to endure without having to do anything. You can be passive in your suffering, waiting for its benefits to reveal themselves, trusting that the pain itself is doing the work of growth. It removes the burden of responsibility. You don't have to figure out how to respond skillfully because the suffering itself is handling that. You don't have to actively extract wisdom because the pain is automatically installing it. It's comforting. It's much more comforting than the truth. The truth is harder. The truth is that suffering is just suffering unless you meet it skillfully. The problem with believing pain automatically purifies is that it keeps you passive. You endure, but you don't engage. You wait for the meaning to emerge, rather than creating meaning through how you respond. And as we explored earlier, whether you frame this through God or karma or manifestation or the universe's plan, it's the same false security. The cosmic creator playing chess with your life, karma arranging perfect lessons, the universe conspiring for your highest good. All of these promise the same thing. If you just endure, if you just trust, if you just wait long enough, the suffering will reveal its gift. But here's what the teaching emphasizes. If you don't take responsibility to make things good for yourself and the world, there's no guarantee things turn out well. No guarantee at all. The suffering might just be suffering. The tragedy might just be tragic. The pain might make you smaller and harder, and more afraid rather than larger and softer, and more courageous. This isn't pessimism. This is realism. And within this realism lies genuine empowerment. Because if suffering doesn't automatically improve you, that means you have agency in what happens next. Buddhism addresses this directly in the second noble truth, the truth about the origin of suffering. Suffering has causes, and those causes include our response to difficulty. When pain appears, and pain will appear. That's the first noble truth. The truth of dukkha, the unsatisfactoriness built into existence. We respond. We respond with craving, trying to grasp at pleasure or comfort to replace the pain. We respond with aversion, trying to push the pain away, deny it, escape it, numb it. We respond with delusion, making up stories about why this is happening, who's to blame, what it means about us. And these responses, craving, aversion, delusion, create more suffering on top of the original suffering. The pain of loss is real. The additional suffering of denial, of trying to pretend the loss didn't happen or doesn't matter, that's something we add. The pain of illness is real. The additional suffering of rage at our body for being ill, of shame about being weak, of terror about the future, that's something we add. The pain of disappointment is real. The additional suffering of taking it as proof that we're fundamentally flawed, that nothing ever works out for us, that we should give up on our hopes, that's something we add. This is actually good news. If our response to pain creates additional suffering, that means our response to pain can create something different. We have agency here, not over whether pain appears. We don't control that, but over how we meet the pain when it does appear. Two people face the same loss, the same circumstances, the same practical challenges. One person meets it with craving, desperately trying to replace what was lost, to fill the void with something, anything. They grasp at distractions, at new relationships that aren't quite right, at achievements that don't quite satisfy. The grasping creates more suffering because nothing adequately replaces what's gone. The other person meets it with space. They allow the loss to be loss. They grieve without trying to rush through grief or avoid it or make it mean something it doesn't mean. The grief is painful but clean. It moves through them and eventually, slowly, releases. One person meets it with aversion, refusing to accept what happened, fighting reality, insisting it shouldn't be this way. The refusal creates constant tension, constant friction with what is. They suffer from the loss and from their fight against the loss. The other person meets it with acceptance, not liking what happened, not wanting it, but acknowledging that this is what's actually here. The acceptance doesn't remove the pain, but it removes the layer of suffering that comes from fighting reality. One person meets it with delusion, creating elaborate stories about why this happened, who's to blame, what it means about their worth or the world's fairness. The stories create additional suffering because they take them further from reality and into constructed narratives that keep them stuck. The other person meets it with clarity. This happened because of causes and conditions, most of which had nothing to do with them personally. The clarity doesn't make it hurt less, but it prevents them from taking on burdens that aren't theirs to carry. Same loss, different responses, entirely different outcomes. And this brings us to something practical from the original teaching. Something you can use right now with whatever difficulty you're facing. Don't evaluate your situation by economic terms. Don't evaluate it by social status or conventional success markers. Evaluate it by asking, how can I use this? What can I extract from this moment? Not what lesson is it supposed to teach you. We've moved beyond that idea. But what can you actually discover here if you engage skillfully? What teaching might be available? What discovery about yourself or reality? What strength could you develop? What virtue could you practice? This is extraction, mining value from raw material. The situation doesn't come with inherent value or meaning. It's clay, remember? But you can extract value through how you work with it. Someone faces financial difficulty. Evaluated economically, this is just loss. Less money, fewer options, more stress. But evaluated by extraction, what can be discovered here? Maybe the discovery of which relationships remain when money isn't a factor. Maybe the practice of contentment with less, of finding satisfaction outside consumption. Maybe the development of creativity and resourcefulness, of learning to create more with less. Maybe the teaching about what you actually value when you can't afford everything you want. Maybe you discover that many things you thought were necessities are actually preferences. Maybe you develop the skill of making do, of improvising, of finding alternative paths. Maybe you learn humility in asking for help when you need it. None of this makes the financial difficulty good. None of this means you shouldn't work to improve your situation. But it means the difficulty doesn't have to be purely destructive. There's clay here that can be shaped into something valuable. Someone faces social rejection. Evaluated socially, this is just pain, exclusion, loneliness, the sting of not belonging. But evaluated by extraction, what can be discovered? Maybe the strength of standing alone when necessary. Maybe the clarity about which connections are genuine and which are conditional. Maybe the compassion for others who are excluded or marginalized. Maybe the freedom of not needing everyone's approval to act according to your values. Maybe you develop the capacity to be with discomfort without needing to fix it immediately. Maybe you discover who you are when you're not performing for others. Maybe you learn to distinguish between loneliness and solitude, between isolation and chosen time alone. Again, none of this makes rejection good. None of this means you shouldn't seek genuine connection. But it means you're not powerless in the face of rejection. You can extract something valuable even from painful social experiences. Someone faces a crisis of meaning. The work they've devoted years to suddenly feels empty. The relationship they've built suddenly feels hollow. The goals they've pursued suddenly feel pointless. Evaluated by conventional measures, this is failure, wasted time, wrong choices, back to square one. But evaluated by extraction, what's available here? Maybe the profound teaching that meaning isn't found in external achievements, but created through engagement. Maybe the discovery of what you actually value underneath all the conditioning about what you should value. Maybe the virtue of honesty, of acknowledging when something isn't working rather than pretending. Maybe the strength of starting over with more wisdom than you had before. The crisis isn't good. The emptiness is genuinely painful. But how you meet the crisis determines whether it destroys you or transforms you. Now let's be very specific about the contrast. Two people face the same difficult circumstances. Let's say both experience a serious betrayal from someone they trusted deeply. Same situation, same level of trust that was broken, same practical consequences. One person extracts bitterness. They fixate on the betrayal, replaying it endlessly. They catalogue every lie, every deception, every moment when they were foolish enough to trust. They build a case against the person who betrayed them and against themselves for being betrayed. Over time, they grow more rigid. They develop rules to protect themselves. Never trust anyone completely. Always assume the worst. Keep people at a distance. Be vigilant for signs of deception. They grow more fearful. Every new relationship carries the shadow of the betrayal. Every vulnerability feels dangerous. They armor themselves so thoroughly that genuine connection becomes nearly impossible. They grow more contracted. Their world becomes smaller as they exclude more and more people and situations that might involve risk. They're protecting themselves, yes, but they're also imprisoning themselves. The betrayal becomes the defining story of their life. Years later, they're still telling it the same way, with the same anger, the same sense of victimization. They've organized their entire identity around what was done to them. The betrayal didn't make them wiser. It made them harder, more closed, less capable of the very things that make life meaningful. Trust, vulnerability, genuine connection. The other person extracts wisdom. They allow themselves to feel the full pain of the betrayal without adding elaborate stories about what it means. They grieve what was lost. The trust, the relationship, the version of reality they believed in. They acknowledge their part, if any, without taking on responsibility for the other person's choices. They notice any patterns in their own behavior that made them vulnerable without concluding they're fundamentally flawed. Over time, they grow more compassionate. Having experienced how much betrayal hurts, they're more careful not to cause that pain in others. They develop genuine empathy for anyone navigating broken trust. They grow more wise. They learn to notice red flags earlier without becoming paranoid. They learn to offer trust appropriately rather than either blindly or not at all. They develop discernment, which is different from cynicism. They grow more free. The betrayal no longer defines them or controls their choices. They've integrated the experience without being imprisoned by it. They can be open again because they've developed the capacity to handle hurt without being destroyed by it. Same betrayal, completely different outcomes. What made the difference? The circumstances didn't determine the outcome. The relationship to the circumstances determined the outcome. One person let the betrayal make them smaller. One person used the betrayal to become larger. One person extracted bitterness, rigidity, fear, contraction. One person extracted compassion, wisdom, discernment, freedom. The same clay, shaped into entirely different forms. And this is what Buddhism means when it teaches that suffering has causes, and those causes include our response. The betrayal happened. That caused suffering, unavoidable suffering. But what each person did next, how they held the betrayal, what stories they told about it, what they chose to extract from it, that created additional suffering or created wisdom. This doesn't mean the person who extracted wisdom wasn't hurt. It doesn't mean they handled everything perfectly. It doesn't mean they never felt bitter or fearful or contracted. But somewhere in their process, they made a choice to work with the clay rather than be destroyed by it, a choice to extract something valuable rather than just accumulate damage. And that choice, repeated over and over in small moments, not just once in a grand gesture, determined what the betrayal ultimately became in their life. A scar that's still tender sometimes but doesn't limit their movement, or a wound that never quite heals, constantly reopening, constantly limiting what they can do. The teaching is clear. You have more agency here than you probably realize. Suffering will appear. That's not optional. That's the nature of existence. But what you create from the suffering, that's where your power lies. Not power to prevent pain. Not power to make everything work out well automatically, but power to meet pain in ways that don't multiply it. Power to extract value from difficulty. Power to become larger rather than smaller in the face of what's hard. This is why the myth that pain purifies is so dangerous, because it suggests you don't need to do anything. Just endure, and the purification happens automatically. But it doesn't. Not without skillful engagement. Not without choosing, moment by moment, to work with the clay rather than be buried by it. So when you face difficulty, and you will face difficulty, the question isn't, what is this supposed to teach me? The question is, what will I extract from this? What will I create from this clay? How will I meet this in a way that doesn't make me smaller? The circumstances don't determine your answer to that question. You do. And your answer, lived out in small choices, repeated responses, daily engagements with difficulty, creates who you become on the other side of the suffering. Someone who's been hardened by pain, or someone who's been tempered by it. Someone who's been broken by difficulty, or someone who's been broken open by it. Someone who's been diminished, or someone who's been deepened. Same suffering, different relationships to the suffering, different outcomes entirely. This is the teaching Buddhism offers about suffering. Not that it happens for a reason. Not that it automatically improves you. Not that you should be grateful for it, or trust that it's all part of a plan, but that you have agency in how you meet it. And that agency makes all the difference between suffering that compounds and suffering that eventually, slowly, through skillful engagement, transmutes into something that doesn't destroy you. The clay is in your hands, even when the clay is pain, especially when the clay is pain. What you make from it is still, always, up to you. Let's return to where we started, but with everything we've learned along the way. The clay metaphor. Everything that comes to you, every circumstance, every relationship, every success and failure, every moment of ease and moment of difficulty arrives as raw material, not prefabricated with meaning already installed, not prepackaged with purpose already determined, not designed specifically for you by cosmic intelligence. Raw material, clay. We must free ourselves from the idea that everything comes ready-made with inherent significance. This is one of the most liberating shifts you can make in how you understand your life. Because when you believe things come prefabricated with meaning, you spend enormous energy trying to discover what that meaning is. You're constantly asking, what is this supposed to teach me? What am I meant to learn here? What's the hidden purpose behind this difficulty? And while you're asking these questions, you're passive, waiting for the meaning to reveal itself, waiting for the purpose to become clear, waiting for cosmic forces to finish arranging things so you can finally understand why this is happening. But when you understand that everything arrives as raw material, as an invitation to use it in the best way possible, you become active. You stop asking what it means and start asking what you can make from it. You stop waiting for purpose to be delivered and start creating purpose through your engagement. This shift from discovering meaning to creating meaning changes everything. Think about stability for a moment. Not external stability, which is largely outside your control, but internal stability. People without internal stability only take advantage of one day per year. We explored this earlier, but it's worth returning to now, with everything we understand about clay. They wait for everything to align perfectly. The astrology has to be favorable. Their friends need to be supportive. Their partner needs to be encouraging. Their health needs to be good. The moon needs to be in the right phase. The tides need to be just so. Their mood needs to be ideal. Their inspiration needs to be flowing. And on that rare day when everything aligns, they work with the clay. They create something. They make progress. And they say, "This is when I'm supposed to work, when the universe supports me." But there are 364 other days. 364 days when the clay is still there, still available, still workable. But they're not working with it because they're waiting for perfect conditions. The person who progresses doesn't depend on external alignment. They don't wait for the stars to arrange themselves, or for everyone around them to be supportive, or for their mood to be perfect. They understand something fundamental. The clay is always there. Conditions are never perfect, and progress comes from working with imperfect clay under imperfect conditions, day after day after day. This brings us to one of the most powerful declarations from the original teaching. My life, I command. My state, I command. When you first hear this, it might sound arrogant, like claiming control over things you don't actually control. But it's not arrogance. It's radical responsibility. You don't command whether difficulty appears. You don't command whether loss happens, or betrayal occurs, or illness strikes. You don't command other people's choices, or the economy, or natural disasters, or any of the countless forces that shape your circumstances. But you do command your response. I will decide what I think. I will decide what I feel. I will decide what I attend to. Not in the sense that you can simply choose to feel differently through force of will. Emotions arise from conditions, and you can't just decide not to feel sad when loss happens, or angry when injustice occurs. But you can decide whether you feed those feelings or starve them, whether you ruminate on them or notice them and let them pass, whether you build your identity around them or hold them lightly. You can decide what meaning you make from the material you've been given. This job loss, does it mean you're worthless, or does it mean you're between chapters? That's not predetermined. You decide through how you hold it. This illness, does it mean your body is betraying you, or does it mean you're learning what it means to be embodied and vulnerable? You decide through your relationship to it. This betrayal, does it mean people can't be trusted, or does it mean you're learning discernment? You decide through what you extract from it. The circumstances are what they are, but the meaning isn't inherent in the circumstances. The meaning emerges from how you work with the circumstances, how you shape the clay. And here's the crucial part. You decide whether this strengthens you or weakens you. Not whether it's pleasant or unpleasant. You don't control that. But whether your engagement with it makes you more capable or less capable, more open or more closed, more wise or more confused. That's in your hands. The teaching from Tibetan lamas expands this even further. They say that if you have the audacity to see other people as Buddhas, you receive Buddha's blessings from them. But if you see them as enemies, even their kindness harms you. This isn't just about being positive or having a good attitude. It's about something more profound regarding how perception shapes experience. When you perceive someone as having Buddha nature, as fundamentally capable of wisdom and compassion, even when they're currently confused or unskillful, You create conditions for them to show you that nature. Not because you're magically transforming them, but because your perception changes how you relate to them, and how you relate to them changes how they can show up with you. If you see someone as fundamentally good, but temporarily struggling, you meet them with patience and openness. That patience and openness create space for their goodness to emerge. If you see someone as fundamentally flawed or dangerous or untrustworthy, you meet them with guardedness and suspicion. That guardedness and suspicion creates conditions for them to be defensive, closed, or difficult with you. And here's the really interesting part. Even when they're genuinely trying to help you, if you perceive them as enemies or threats, you can't receive the help. Someone offers you honest feedback with good intentions. If you perceive them as attacking you, you receive their feedback as harm, even though help was being offered. Your perception filtered the help into harm. Someone expresses concern about a choice you're making. If you perceive them as trying to control you or undermine you, you receive their concern as interference, even though care was being offered. Your perception transformed care into aggression. This is the insight. Your perception determines what you actually receive from any situation or person. Not entirely, of course. Sometimes people genuinely are hostile or harmful, and your perception of that is accurate. The teaching isn't suggesting you should naively see everyone as trustworthy regardless of their actions. But it is suggesting that your perception creates a filter through which everything passes, and that filter significantly shapes what reaches you. So, how does this work in daily life? Let's get specific and practical. You're stuck in traffic. This is clay, raw material. What will you make from it? One option: make frustration and stress. Rage at other drivers. Catastrophize about being late. Let your body tense up and your mind race with irritation. Another option: make peace with what is. You can't change the traffic, but you can breathe. You can listen to something interesting or valuable. You can simply be present with being still when you'd rather be moving. Same traffic, different clay sculptures. A colleague takes credit for your idea in a meeting. This is clay. What will you make from it? One option: make resentment and victimhood. Stew in anger. Tell everyone what happened to gather sympathy. Let it poison your relationship with that colleague and your experience at work. Another option: make clarity and appropriate action. Feel the anger without being controlled by it. Decide whether to address it directly with the colleague, with your manager, or to let it go based on what's actually useful. Learn something about workplace dynamics and your own boundaries. Same situation, different responses, different outcomes. Your child is struggling in school. This is clay. What will you make from it? One option: make anxiety and pressure, panic about their future, push them harder in ways that might damage your relationship or their self-confidence. Let your fear drive your parenting. Another option, make curiosity and support. What's actually happening for them? What do they need? How can you help without taking over? What's worth worrying about and what isn't? Same struggling child, different parental responses. Entirely different family dynamics result. Someone criticizes you unfairly. This is clay. What will you make from it? One option, make defensiveness and counterattack. Prove them wrong. Build a case against them. Replay the criticism obsessively, each time reinforcing how unfair it was. Another option, make discernment. Is there any truth in the criticism, even if it was delivered poorly? What does their criticism tell you about them and their concerns? Can you respond in a way that doesn't escalate conflict but also doesn't accept unfair characterization? Same criticism, different ways of working with it. You experience a financial setback, unexpected expense, lost income, mounting debt. This is clay. What will you make from it? One option, make panic and shame. Catastrophize about becoming homeless. Hide the problem from everyone. Make desperate decisions from fear. Let the stress leak into every area of your life. Another option, make practical problem, solving and honesty. Assess the situation clearly, without dramatizing it. Make a realistic plan. Ask for help if needed. Notice what you're learning about your relationship with money and security. Same financial difficulty, different approaches. One creates additional suffering, the other works with what's actually here. A friendship becomes distant. Someone you were close to is pulling away. This is clay. What will you make from it? One option, make hurt and abandonment stories. Decide they never really cared. Feel betrayed and rejected. Cut them off completely to protect yourself. Build walls against future friendships. Another option, make space and understanding. People go through seasons. Their distance might have nothing to do with you. Can you care about them without needing constant closeness? What are you learning about attachment and letting go? Same shifting friendship. Different responses create different experiences and different futures. Do you see the pattern? In each case, you're asking, how can I use this clay? Not, what is this supposed to teach me? As if meaning were hidden inside, waiting to be discovered. But what can I create from this as an active engagement with raw material? This is the practice, moment by moment, situation by situation, relationship by relationship. The clay appears. What will you make from it? Now, there's something particularly relevant about this moment if you're listening to this toward the end of a year. The end of a year is traditionally a time for reflection, and this teaching about clay gives you a powerful lens for that reflection. Not to judge yourself harshly, not to catalogue all your failures and shortcomings, but to see clearly, what clay did you work with this year? And what did you make from it? Think about the difficulties you faced, the losses, the disappointments, the struggles. These were clay. Did you work with them skillfully? Did you extract wisdom? Or did you accumulate bitterness? Did they make you more compassionate or more closed? More resilient or more fragile? Be honest, but be kind in your honesty. You don't need to have handled everything perfectly. Nobody does. But you can notice the patterns. When difficulty appeared, how did you tend to meet it? With avoidance or engagement? With blame or responsibility? With rigidity or flexibility? Were there moments when you chose to work with the clay skillfully, even though it was hard? Moments when you could have spiraled into bitterness, but chose differently? Notice those moments. They matter more than you might think. Were there times when you let difficulty make you smaller? When you responded with the patterns we've been exploring? Passive waiting, victimhood, rigid self-protection. Notice those without judgment. Just see them clearly. Think about the opportunities you had, the moments when conditions were favorable, when things went well, when doors opened. This was also clay. Did you use those moments well? Did you recognize them as opportunities and work with them? Or did you wait for even better conditions before fully engaging? Sometimes we waste good clay waiting for perfect clay. We have resources, time, energy, opportunity, but we don't use them because they're not quite ideal yet. And then conditions change and the opportunity passes. Did that happen this year? Not to feel regret, but to see clearly, so you can choose differently going forward. Think about the relationships in your life, the people who challenged you, supported you, frustrated you, taught you. Each relationship was clay. How did you perceive them? As Buddhas offering blessings even through difficulty, or as obstacles preventing you from being happy? Your perception shaped what you could receive from them. If you saw them primarily as problems to solve or threats to defend against, you probably missed opportunities for genuine connection and growth. If you saw them as complex human beings doing their best with their own clay, even when their best wasn't very good, you probably found more patience, more compassion, more capacity to be with difficulty without being destroyed by it. This reflection isn't about judging yourself as having succeeded or failed. It's about seeing clearly so you can choose consciously going forward. Because here's what we've learned through all these teachings. There's no cosmic plan, and that's liberating, not depressing. You're not following a script written by invisible forces. You're not waiting to discover the one true purpose that was assigned to you before you were born. You're not trying to figure out what the universe wants from you. You're working with reality as it actually appears, creating meaning through your engagement with it. There's no predetermined meaning, and that means you're free to create it. The job loss doesn't inherently mean anything about your worth. The relationship ending doesn't inherently mean anything about love's possibility. The illness doesn't inherently mean anything about your value or deservingness. These are events that happened because of causes and conditions. What they mean in your life depends on how you work with them. Suffering doesn't automatically improve you, but it can if you meet it skillfully. Pain isn't redemptive by itself. It doesn't purify or elevate automatically. But when met with wisdom, with compassion toward yourself and others, with the willingness to extract teaching rather than just accumulate damage, it can become a vehicle for genuine growth. The practice is this: treating each moment as the best opportunity in the universe. Not because it is the best opportunity in some objective sense, but because it's the only opportunity actually available to you right now. And you can either work with it or wait for a better moment that might never come. The person sitting across from you, difficult as they might be, is the person actually here. You can relate to them as an obstacle, or you can relate to them as someone with Buddha nature, temporarily obscured by confusion. Your perception will shape what's possible between you. The circumstance you're in, unfair or disappointing as it might be, is the circumstance actually present. You can fight against it with rigid insistence that it should be different, or you can work with it to create what's actually possible from here. Your choice determines whether this moment strengthens or weakens you. The mood you're in, tired, irritable, unmotivated, is your actual state right now. You can wait for a better mood, or you can work with this mood, asking what's possible, even with imperfect energy and enthusiasm. Your willingness to engage with reality as it is determines whether you progress or remain stuck waiting for ideal conditions. This is what it means to live with clay in your hands. Not someday, when you've figured everything out. Not when conditions are perfect. Not when you feel completely ready. Now, with things as they actually are. The clay is imperfect. It always is. Some days it's very imperfect, lumpy, difficult to work with, seemingly resistant to your efforts. But it's still clay. It's still workable. And the question is always the same. What will you make from it? Not what were you meant to make. Not what the universe wants you to make. Not what would make it the perfect creation. Just, what will you actually make from the clay you've actually been given in the conditions that actually exist? This is your freedom. This is your power. Not power over circumstances. Not control over outcomes. Not the ability to make everything turn out well through positive thinking. But genuine agency over your response. Real choice about how you engage. Actual freedom to create meaning even when you can't control events. My life, I command. My state, I command. I don't command whether difficulty appears, but I command how I meet it. I don't command what others do, but I command what I extract from my interactions with them. I don't command the clay I receive, but I command what I make from that clay. This is the teaching, simple in concept, profound in practice. Every moment is an opportunity to work with clay. Every relationship, every difficulty, every joy, every ordinary, unremarkable moment when nothing special is happening. All of it is clay. All of it is workable. All of it can be shaped into something through your engagement with it. So as this year ends and a new one begins, the question isn't, what will the universe bring me? The question is, what will I create from whatever appears? Not naively, pretending everything is wonderful when it isn't. Not in denial of real difficulty and real pain, but with clear eyes and skilled hands, understanding that you're the artist and reality is the clay, and every moment is an opportunity to work. The clay is in your hands, right now, in this moment. Not perfect clay, not ideal circumstances, not everything aligned just so. Just this actual moment, this actual situation, this actual you, with your actual capacities and limitations. And the question that determines everything, what will you make from it? Not someday, not when you're more ready, not when conditions improve. Now, the clay is waiting. Your hands are ready even if you don't feel ready. This moment, imperfect as it is the best opportunity in the universe, because it's the only moment actually available. And you have the audacity, the courage, the capacity to work with it. Not to make it perfect, not to transform it into something completely different, but to engage with it skillfully, to extract what value exists here, to shape it into something through your attention and care and effort. This is living with clay in your hands. This is what it means to command your life and your state. This is how meaning is made, not found, but made. And it's available to you right now, in this moment, with whatever clay you've been given. The question is always the same. The practice is always the same. What will you make from this? We've traveled through some challenging territory together over these 3 hours. We looked at the comfortable lie. Everything happens for a reason, and why it keeps us passive, waiting for cosmic forces to deliver meaning. We explored what karma actually is, not divine judgment or cosmic reward, but natural cause and effect. Actions create conditions. Conditions create results. We discovered the clay metaphor, that nothing comes prefabricated with meaning, and this is liberating, not depressing. You're not discovering your purpose. You're creating it from the raw material of your actual life. We saw how people who thrive don't wait for perfect conditions. They work with imperfect clay on 364 ordinary days, not just one perfect day per year. We faced the hard truth that suffering doesn't automatically improve you, but it can, when met skillfully. The paradigm shift is complete, from waiting for meaning to creating meaning, from cosmic insurance to personal responsibility, from perfect conditions to any conditions. This is the practice, meeting each moment as raw material, choosing your relationship to what appears, extracting wisdom from whatever comes. Not once, but continuously. Every moment, new clay. You're not waiting for permission from the universe. You're not stuck until conditions are perfect. You're not being tested or punished. You're simply being given clay, and you have hands. Share your reflections below. Where are you listening from in the world? What resonated with you? What will you do with the clay in front of you right now? And if there are Buddhist teachings you want to explore in the coming year, share those too. Let us know where you are. This global community matters. The clay is in your hands. Your hands are ready. Everything you need is already here.